Governor, it's your second day in Iowa. Had a big event last night. Why are you the best Republican running for the nomination? Why are you the best one that can take on Obama in the fall?
Well, obviously this election is about the economy, it's about jobs, it's about getting America working again. Bill Northey and I were just talking about, the ag community up here in Iowa is probably having as close to a record year as they've ever had. In Iowa, things are looking pretty good. But across this country, you're seeing, in some places, record numbers of people out of work. You got 16% unemployment in the African American population, 11% unemployment in the Hispanic population. And, they don't care whether it's a Democrat or Republican. They just want somebody that says, listen, we're going to get America working again. And we've done that in Texas. We kept our taxes low, we kept our regulatory climate fair and predictable, we got a legal system that doesn't allow for oversuing, and people have flocked to Texas. I mean, since the decade that we just finished here, the 2000s, 730,000 new jobs created. 40% of the jobs created in America were in Texas between June of 09 and June of 10. I mean, it didn't happen by accident. And we want to do the same thing for America. I mean, if folks believe that we can create that, which we will, in Washington, D.C. for the country, then we get America back working. And I'll tell you, I don't think a Democrat that's out of a job really doesn't care how he gets to take care of his family, again, as long as it's somebody who's getting America back working, and that's what we're going to do.
You're starting your campaign in Iowa at an interesting time. We just had the straw poll. The field is narrowed, but at the same time, it kind of has strengthened. Some other candidates have emerged. How important is Iowa to your path to the nomination?
Well, I think it's obviously one of the most important states, and we're going to spend a lot of time here. I just had breakfast with Governor Branstad a few minutes ago, and his advice was just get out there and shake as many hands as you can, and he said make all 99 counties. So Lord willing, I know that's a big chore, but I was the agriculture commissioner in Texas. So the folks that I'm going to be seeing here in Iowa are not unlike the folks in Texas. They're just hard-working, they're industrious, they want government to leave them alone, and that's one of the things that they're going to hear from us, is that we're going to try to make it where government leaves your pocketbook alone, it leaves your regulations where you can live more freely, and try to free them up from frivolous lawsuits. We get those kind of things done in Washington, D.C., and America's economy will take off.
President Obama's in Iowa, I think a little bit later today, on a listening tour.
Right.
Do you think there's much listening? Does he need to be listening, or should he be doing something to stimulate things?
I understand. I understand his goal is to try to get out, look like he's engaged, that he's been paying attention. Obviously, for the last 2.5+ years, he hadn't been paying attention because our economy. Well, he's been paying attention to the wrong people. Let me put it that way. If he'd have been out here listening to Bill North, if he'd been listening to Terry Branstad, what he would have heard is, listen, you cannot spend your way to prosperity. This economic experiment that he tried on the American economy has been an abysmal failure. I mean, we got 14, I think now since this debt ceiling deal, over $16 trillion worth of debt that our kids are going to have to pay off. And there's only one way you can pay that off, and that's by creating an environment in this country where the job creators know that when they risk their capital, they're going to have a good chance to have a return on investment. Lower the taxes, have fair and predictable regulations, keep the frivolous lawsuits to a minimum. And that's how you do it.
Is the repeal of Obamacare or how we handle that also important too? Because right now, there was a report out, I think last week, small businesses are investing more in technology than actually people because they don't know what the costs are. What are your plans to roll back Obamacare, limit it?
Day one, I will sign an executive order to try to eliminate everything that an executive order can on Obamacare. And in the first 100 days, working with a Republican House and I suspect a Republican Senate, we will repeal Obamacare because it is a disaster, not only from the standpoint of access to quality care, but the cost to the states. It totally bankrupted a state like California, it costs Texas $2.7 billion more every year if it goes into effect in 2014. It is truly, outside of this monstrous debt that hangs over this country like a black cloud, the cost of the debt and Obamacare, both of those have to be dealt with, and that's the reason America has to get back to work.
Your strict 10th Amendment kind of stance has caused some in the race to maybe attack you a little bit. Your comments about what happened in New York on the gay marriage vote. What about states who pass a health care law like Mitt Romney did in Massachusetts? Yeah. What's your view on that? Is that, hey, he was entitled to do it?
Here's the way I look at it. The 10th Amendment was set up so states could be laboratories of innovation. And you know, there's going to be some outliers out there that do some kind of what most of us folks consider to be some very out of the ordinary things like New York and the same-sex marriage. But the fact, and that's the reason that we have the process to have a United States constitutional amendment to ban any states that are doing those types of what we consider to be social, moral issue problematic. But we also need to pass a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. And the states, I'm gonna travel across the country helping to pass balanced budget amendments in the states till we get it done and force Washington to stay within the bounds of that. But the issues of the 10th Amendment, I believe the states need to be laboratories of innovation. Listen, what they did in Massachusetts was their call. But what we know now is none of us want to try that because it was a disaster. And, you know, Governor Romney ought to just stand up and say, you know what? Yeah, I was the governor and I signed it, but it was a disaster. Don't go there. Bobby Jindal in Louisiana, he'll come up with some really innovative ways to deliver health care on the Medicaid side of things. And I'll promise you, us governors, we'll go pick and choose from around the country the best ones. We'll see something over here that didn't work, and we'll say, okay, we don't want to go do that. This president, with his one-size-fits-all concepts in Washington, they will destroy America. And that's the reason that the 10th Amendment can be and should be respected and allowed to be used as a tool.
You're standing next to our Iowa Secretary of Agriculture, so I feel prompted. And you're from Texas,
yes,
so big oil, right? Big oil. What are your views on ethanol, biofuels, wind energy, all of those things? How important is that to America's energy problem?
Well, Bill and I were just talking about as we rolled in, because you got a big wind turbine down here that's kind of a showcase at the fair. Texas is the #1 wind-producing state in the nation. Iowa's #2. That's good competition. Bill said, "Look out, we're coming at you." and so all of these energy sources, you know, ethanol is an issue that's been problematic for us in Texas because of the huge amount of cattle that we feed and the corn prices. I think most people understand that ethanol is now a very mature industry. The talk of starting to phase out of that subsidy. The issue that the oil and gas industry has tax incentives. I think it's worth a conversation with all of the different types of natural gas, the oil producers, the biofuel, the solar folks, the nuclear folks, to all come together and say, listen, we need an energy policy that will make America independent of all these other countries that we're relying upon that frankly some of them want to do harm to us. So all of these sources of energy have their role. Again, some of them, I mean, the vast majority clean coal and natural gas and nuclear are probably the three that we're going to see really deliver the most energy. But these others have their role and their place, and I think finding the right level of tax incentives and what have you to make sure people are getting involved in those are one of the ways to help on the energy front.
Just one final question. We're
Yes, sir.
When are we going to see you? How much are you going to be here?
Well, 99 counties takes a while.
That's that's a promise,
you know, Lord willing, I'm going to do my best to see as many of them as I can. Senator Grassley said he's been in 85.
He'll race you.
He's awesome. Let me tell you, y'all are really blessed to have a guy like Senator Grassley in Washington who has an incredible grasp of what's going on in the world, and I respect him greatly.